Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma. We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. We are also authors and invite you to check out our books, including my books, Potted and Pruned, Homegrown and Handpicked, and Seeded and Sodded, my trilogy of gardening humor, and my new book, Creatures and Critters, Who's in My Garden?
And my book, The 20-30-something Garden Guide, a no fuss, down and dirty, Gardening 101 for anyone who wants to grow stuff. You can ask for any of our books at your favorite bookstore or find them online wherever books are sold.
And speaking of online, you can also find us as the Garden Angelist on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, sometimes Pinterest, and we'd love for you to join our Facebook group, the Garden Angelist Garden Club.
And now on to this week's episode.
Hello, Dee.
Hey, Carol, how's it going?
It's a sunshiny day, and my crabapple is a bursting into bloom right in front of me out this window.
Ooh. Honeybees love crabapples, as do many pollinators.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I thought that the freeze last week was going to be make it look terrible, but it looks perfect.
Mine came through it too. So I thought we should give a few garden updates because we're in kind of a busy season. You're at the beginning and I'm in the middle.
Yep.
Do you want me to go first?
You go first, middle lady.
Okay, so yesterday I planted most of my tomatoes. I went to the Tomato Man's Daughter, and you can finally plant tomatoes in Oklahoma. I wanted to tell everybody that because they have been trying to plant tomatoes for about a month, and I kept telling them not to. So unless you live up in the Panhandle, you can plant tomatoes now. Enjoy. And I also worked on my containers and my perennial gardens, and we had to have some stuff done on our septic tank, and so it tore up some of my garden, and I put that back, and I planted seeds in the cutting garden, and all of them are starting to come up. The zinnias are up. The sunflowers I planted a week later, so they're just starting to come up. Time to thin those seedlings. And I forgot to plant, I ran out of room before I planted cosmos seeds. I've run out of room, period.
You have a huge garden, Dee. How could you run out of room? That's crazy talk. You just need to dig another bed.
No, I do not. I do not need to dig another bed. But Bill is gone. He's going to go and get me some more containers today because I'm going to plant the rest of my tomatoes. And I think I'm going to grow my eggplant and some of my peppers in containers too, because I have put in lavender around all the beds in the potager, and it's taken up some room, but I love that lavender and I love the structure. So, I thought this year was going to be another travel year and I was just going to have a few things, and then things changed, and so I'm growing more vegetables.
Good. So you wanted to give a shout out to somebody?
I do. I want to give a shout out to Edward Joseph Farms in Hera, Oklahoma. That's for people who live central. Those are for people looking for tomato and pepper transplants if you don't want to drive so far. It's a small family-run farm, and he has both. And I have heard he has a really good selection. You just call him. The link's in our show notes. I've already linked it. Call him off of his website, and he does curbside.
Very good. We are 3 to 4 weeks behind you, Dee. Mm-hmm. So don't plant tomatoes in Indiana yet. Don't plant your peppers. Don't plant your eggplants. Not time to put the seeds in the ground. Hold off, hold off, hold off. And so I would say that every single garden center is anxious to sell you plants, but please hold off until close to Mother's Day. And then check the websites, check Facebook. Most of them around here will have social distancing guidelines. You may be able to phone in an order, then drive in, and they will load it up for you. I think my little greenhouse around the corner, I'm going to get an early morning shopping hour so I can go in and get everything I need socially distant from the rest of the world.
Yeah, and we need to do that right now. I was also going to say, couldn't you plant, so when you say don't buy anything, you're talking about tender plants. You don't want anybody to plant anything tender. But I was thinking that they could probably, in your state right now, plant fruit trees, for example.
You could plant fruit trees. You could plant perennials if they have been hardened off, if they've been kept all cozy in a greenhouse. But if they're kind of hardened off, you could plant those. Probably later this week, I'm going to dig up a bunch of perennial starts for my sister. who is redoing her yard because they got a dog, Dee, and the dog had been returned to the rescue place like twice. And they got the dog, and they found out the dog's not fatal flaw, but his bad habit is he likes to dig. And all winter, he basically dug up their backyard. So she's having to redo stuff. So I'm getting her a bunch of stuff. And then I'm going through and I'm actually cleaning up a little damage from the freeze, not much. Most of the plants that have freeze damage, I'm just letting them go. They'll kind of grow out of it. But stuff that turns to mush, like hostas, cut those back. They'll come back up.
You know where we're going to talk about that during our dirt, right?
Oh, yeah. But well, whatever.
We can talk about it again.
Yeah, but anyway.
Okay. You just talk about what you think about because it's that time of year for you guys. And I'll talk more about freeze damage in a minute, but we just now got to where it's not super cold here. It was still 49 degrees here this morning, but the rest of the week is in the 50s. So that's why I said go ahead and plant here. I'm also still dividing perennials too. So, and I'm giving some away.
I'm spreading mulch. So I have bags of mulch that my nephew came over Saturday and moved around for me. And then I had a tree trimmed in the back this morning, and I just couldn't bear the thought of those chippings from the tree being taken off to somebody else's garden. So I had him leave them in the driveway.
Yours.
They're mine.
So you have a lot of mulch. So let's talk a little bit about, just quickly, about mulch and what kind you like and why sometimes you buy it in bags unless you can get it free.
So I like a mulch that's called, sometimes called pine fines or pine bark mulch. And
me too.
It only comes in bags.
Yeah, it pretty much does here too. You can't buy it any other way. Plus, sometimes it's easier to pull those bags and position them around the garden. They aren't as heavy as if I go and shovel out a whole bunch of mulch. You know what I mean?
Right. And these are 3 cubic foot bags. So they are heavy. But I have this cart that's called a Wheels Easy. And I tell people, I said, it's sort of like a little tarp with a wheel and handles. And so it sits to the ground and I can just roll that bag in there and then I can wheel it to where I want, slit it open, mulch it, and you don't have to lift it up into a wheelbarrow. And I should provide a link to that because I love that Wheels Easy. That's one of the things that, like, if it ever wore out, I would replace it.
Mm-hmm. I have a Vermont garden cart that I use for the same thing, but you do have to lift them in there. And I can get about 6 bags in the Vermont garden cart. And something Megan brought up to me today, my daughter Megan, I should explain for those of you who don't know. She's my second oldest daughter. She and I were looking around the garden this morning. It really looks good right now. And she said, a lot of people don't believe you do this all by yourself. And I said, well, they don't. So let me just say, I 99.9% do it by myself. I have one lady that comes out and helps me once every couple of weeks, maybe twice if I'm lucky enough to get her, just pretty much during the early part of the season when everything needs doing, like right now. And she has to work me in because she has a lot of clients. Now she's like having 2 of me out there. She's fast and good. So I appreciate her helping me, but that's it. Nobody else helps me in the garden. So people think I don't do my own gardening, Carol. Is that true?
I believe that you do your own gardening. I do my own gardening. I mean, my nephew came over and, he carried those bags around for me, which just saves me some steps. But I'm out there, that pile of mulch, I'm doing that pile of mulch. I did 3 wheelbarrows full before our call today. So, but slow and steady wins the race.
So we do our own gardens. We really do. And mine's just big. And I'll take you guys on a tour probably this week on Instagram. So we have a quote.
I love this quote. Go ahead. I found it. You read it.
All right. If all flowers wanted to be roses, nature would lose her springtime beauty, and the fields would no longer be decked out with little wildflowers. That's Saint Therese of Lisieux. And Saint Therese is also called the little flower. That's one of the reasons why she's called that. She was a nun in France. And I've always loved that quote because I think it's true.
It is true. And so we wanted to talk about a little wildflower, which is Solomon seal, a native plant to the eastern United States. You want me to try that botanical name there, Dee?
You go for it, because that's a hard one.
Polygonatum biflorum.
That's pretty good. I was going to say polygonatum, but I bet it is natum. Polygonatum biflorum. So the regular one is native to the eastern United States.
Yes. But
that's not what's in my garden.
It's not what's in my garden either. We have imported polygonatums.
We do. And I was going to say that the flowers of the native and also the non-native are prized by queen bumblebees. People don't realize it, but bumblebees and also wood bees have queens. And the queens are a bigger bee that comes out, as do yellow jackets for that matter. They have a queen that comes out earlier, and she has to have nectar really early so that she can go and have enough energy to lay eggs. And she has a nest, and I have one that is under an oak tree in my shade garden, and there's a lot of Solomon seal around that, the variegated one. And that's why she put her nest there. There's a piece of bare ground. It's just right for her. And you know what's going to happen to that nest?
What, Dee?
Nothing. Because bumblebees are not aggressive around their nests. And sometimes you'll get a wood bee that kind of flies up in your face and is fussing at you. That's a male bee. The female wants nothing to do with you. And I wouldn't have even known where her nest was. I was just out there really early this morning walking through, and I heard her. And they have a real deep sound because they're a bigger bee. And I was listening for her, and I looked and I saw where her nest was. And I will leave her alone because I like her being in my garden.
Well, that is good to know because I have a fairly sizable patch of Solomon seal. I have the variegated, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And I haven't really kind of gone into that area of the garden to clean up, but that's like on my list because I didn't do a good job cleaning up over there last year, and it really needs attention. So I will look for that nest to see if there is a nest of a queen bumblebee. But so you want to talk about taxonomy puzzles. So polygonatum.
Actually, no, I did not want to talk about puzzles. You did, because you're going to explain how easy it is to get confused. Okay, go ahead.
So, and I quote, it's in the family Asparagaceae, which is in the asparagus family. But there's a subfamily called Nolinioideae, which was formerly called Rusaceae. And before it got put into that, it used to be in a former family, Convalariaceae, and I remember Convalariaceae because that is where the lily of the valley was. But it's a former family because that family got taken away, and then it was formerly in the Liliaceae family. So that's why that's why we should move on.
Solomon seal is in all of these families?
It's moved around. So it was in the Convalariaceae, which isn't a family anymore, and then was in the lily family, which is still a family, and then it got moved to the asparagus. Are you yawning, Dee? You are.
No, I'm horrified.
Anyway.
I'm horrified. So basically, we don't care.
Yes.
And so you said that you get Solomon seal confused with Jacob's ladder.
Yes. I don't know why. I think I just I know when I see Jacob's ladder that's Jacob's ladder, and I know when I see Solomon seal.
Right.
But sometimes I just get confused which is which because that's just what I do. But
I do the same thing with hibiscus and hydrangea. Even though I know the difference between the two plants, sometimes I'll say one for the other, and I have to go correct myself. So everybody, don't worry about that.
No.
All right. So they can be a little aggressive. Solomon seal can be a little aggressive.
In the right spot, they'll create a nice little patch in the right spot. So you and I both confess that we do not have the native polygonatum, Solomon seal.
No, I like the variegated one.
And the variegated one is Polygonatum odoratum variety pluriflorum variegatum. Polygonatum odoratum, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, variegated Solomon seal. And it's Asian.
And okay, so in Oklahoma, sometimes things that are considered aggressive elsewhere we just consider nicely spreading, which I would say that's what it's like in my garden.
I'd say that
it spreads
too.
nicely. It is not that aggressive here. It might be back east. I mean, a lot of Asian plants can be, but a lot of Asian plants are well behaved. So I love this plant. I'm grateful for it. It blooms early. It makes me happy.
And if you go to the garden center, I think 99 times out of 100, they're going to sell you the variegated Solomon seal, which is not native. And then there's a little dwarf variety called Polygonatum humile. I don't know. I have that one, and it is also not native. And over the course of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it's gone from like 3 plants to a little patch that's maybe 18 by 18, but it's half the height of the other. And I'm trying to think. It does not have the variegation. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, I don't want that one, but I'm glad you have it.
Thank you, Dee. And the main thing that they need to grow well is shade and damp. And that's pretty much it.
Right.
Once established, and this is key, once established, they can tolerate a little bit of drought, but shade and damp is their preference.
Yeah, and all of my garden, for those who live here, all of my garden is on drip irrigation, except for just the very front. So they do really well here. They like it here. I would say they also like some mulch. Again, I use that pine bark or I use shredded leaves, and they seem to like pretty good drainage, but they don't mind a little clay.
Right.
Because they don't mind being wet.
Anyway.
So they're an easy plant to grow, fun. Queen bumblebees like them.
Right.
As do other bumblebees.
Right. Shall we move on to the vegetable?
So you do the quote.
Radishes grow just about anywhere. People think, oh, it's just a radish. But radishes are delicious and people don't think of cooking them. Emerald Lagasse.
And he's absolutely right. Have you ever cooked radishes?
I have not.
They are not, you know how they're kind of hot sometimes?
Yes.
Radishes can be a little hot.
Yeah.
Depending on the variety and depending how warm it is when you grow them. They lose all of their heat and they stay crunchy and they're really good in stir fries. I had never cooked radishes until last year because I didn't know you could.
I will have to look up some recipes. And when you said you cooked them, I did go out online and it is easy to find recipes. Basically, you roast it like a root vegetable. That's what I saw.
You can roast them. I've roasted them and I've stir fried them, both. And they do great. And I like smaller radishes better, or you have to chunk the other ones up into big sizes. So radishes are one of the best crops that you can give little kids to grow. They have big seeds. They come up really fast. They make plants fast. They make roots fast. And my youngest daughter, Claire, loves radishes because we grew them together. And I have a really sweet picture of her holding radishes in her hands when she was little.
Oh, you'll have to share that.
One.
Yes, share that, please.
Yeah, it's really sweet. And her they were chubby then, chubby little hands. Now she's 21. Anyway, they're a great plant. The botanical name is, I'm going to try this one, Raphanus sativus. Think that's close?
I think that's...
Or sativus, it'd be I.
I think it's either, I've never heard a radish complain about how I pronounce its botanical name, so I'm going to go with whatever.
I'm going to go with the fact that I've never, ever done a radish's botanical name till now. So there are a whole bunch of really good radish blends. You can buy individual radishes like watermelon radish, right?
Yep.
Which watermelon radish is an heirloom. I don't think it's the easiest radish to grow. It's very trendy, very popular because of chefs, because it's pretty. But the easiest ones to grow are probably Cherry Belle.
Cherry Belle's my favorite. A 1949 All-America's Selection winner.
Yeah, Cherry Belle is as easy a thing as you've ever tried to grow. Chef's Blend is a blend that I'm growing this year. I want to say it was from Botanical Interest, but maybe not. It's done really well. It's a mixture of white radishes, Cherry Bells, I'm pretty sure, and that purple one that looks just like Cherry Belle, but it's purple. And then there's French Breakfast.
I love French
which is
breakfast.
A real pretty red and white bicolor radish. Easter Mix is another mix of really pretty colors. I think it's pink, purple, and white.
Yep, I'm growing that one too.
White Icicle, which is a long white radish.
I've grown it in the past, but I haven't grown white icicle in a while. And I had black radish seeds, Spanish black radishes or something. Never really got them in the ground.
I got them in the ground and harvested them, and I found they did not make me feel cheerful. So I will not grow them again. Not because they were bad. They tasted just fine. I want my radishes to be pink, purple, red, in that color range, because you need color at this time of year. And, I just think you need it. I just think I need color. So
Right.
watermelon radishes take a little longer to grow because they're a little bigger. Usually by the time they, get big enough to pull them up. I sowed radishes at the end of February. When do you sow them?
I would sow them towards the end of March, usually right after I've sown the peas. So end of March. And the best thing is go out like every week or two and sow a small row, and then you'll kind of extend your harvest. And I did not do that this year, Dee.
I did not either. I did not have time. I was too busy, but I did thin them. They have to be thinned to have a good crop, as do many things like lettuce and everything else. And that's really hard for people to do at first, but it has to be done. And I have to get mine in at the end of February, the seeds, because it gets hot here fast sometimes. And once it starts to get hot, they start to get hot.
Right.
And nobody really wants a hot radish. And then they bolt.
Yeah, they'll bolt, and I've let them bolt, and the flowers are actually kind of pretty.
They are pretty. And guess who loves them? Bees.
Bees love them. If you pull it up and it has a split root, it's because it's too old and woody. You can't eat that. It's aged.
Right. And also sometimes they'll get something called root maggots, which are disgusting. But just get rid of those radishes in the trash and then rotate the crop to another part of the garden. When you do your vegetable gardening, you should rotate your crops anyway. That's one of the reasons I'm doing so many tomatoes and peppers in pots this year, because I'm rotating my crops and trying to rotate the tomatoes out of my potager where I normally grow them so that I don't get root knot nematodes in this
Right.
case. So rotate your crops.
Okay. So what else we got to say about radishes? Anything?
They're just darn good eating.
They
and
are
right
good
now,
eating.
I need a dang salad. I need a dang salad. I've been eating cooked vegetables for weeks now because I'm afraid to eat salads, right? And all my lettuce is about 3 inches tall. And I watch it every day and I think, please just keep growing because I need some lettuce and I need some radishes and I need some spring onions.
I will be having radishes and spring onions probably, 3 more weeks. I don't know.
Mine will be about the same.
I got to go thin my radishes today or tomorrow.
Okay, don't forget to do that.
Okay.
I did thin mine. So our next quote, you're going to read, or am I?
I can read it. The foolish man seeks happiness in the distance. The wise grows it under his feet. James Oppenheim.
You know what I was saying about salads? The wise man grows them. Okay, so this is our bookshelf section.
Yes, I thought this one was good because, we're all under the stay-at-home orders and nobody should be traipsing about the country. Nobody is traipsing about the country. And so you ought to seek happiness in your own home, which reminded me of the book When Wanderers Cease to Roam, A Traveler's Journal of Staying Put by Vivian Swift. And you and I...
It's a beautiful book.
It is beautiful because she has sweet little drawings to go with her journey through the garden in a year. And I liked it. And so we pulled it off our shelf. It's worth another look-see.
Yes, she's written several books and they're all illustrated and because I'm looking at the 3 we've listed. Yeah, all 3 of these are illustrated and I own them all because I really, really loved her Gardens of Awe and Folly, a traveler's journal on the meaning of life and gardening.
Yes.
And I bought these other 2 books, The When Wanderers Cease to Roam and Le Road Trip, a traveler's journal of love in France. So as you know, we were supposed to go to France this spring and we didn't get to go, and that's okay. I just hope that we get to go in the fall. And in the meantime, I can stay home and plant radishes.
Yeah, but anyway, it's an enjoyable book just to, just sit and browse, and it's not heavy reading. It's like looking at an art book or something with watercolors.
Yeah, it's a little bit and small, right?
Yes.
It's not a very big book.
No.
They're thin. So if you guys want to take a break, or you can go to get an idea of what her stuff is like, go to her blog. Vivian Swift has a lovely blog.
Right, and she has little notes, and there's little calendar entries, and so she has a note here, and it says, visitors to our homes form their first impressions at the curb. Just ask any real estate agent. A warm and welcoming entry can be created by landscaping, softening the hard edges of steps and stoops, the harsh textures of stone, brick, and concrete walkways. Low shrubs planted near the front facade are standard, but the inclusion of color in the form of flowers adds just that extra softness and warmth. Throughout the village, there are numerous warmly welcoming front walks and enticing entrances. And it's just kind of food for thought. Food for thought to, make your home and your garden a lovely place that you enjoy and other people will enjoy it too.
Yes. I think you've got to bloom where you're planted, as it were.
Yes. And Vivian Swift has a lovely blog, and I went and checked it out because we did not want to refer to a lovely blog and find out that she doesn't keep it current, and she does keep it current. And she had entries.
She does.
She has entries from very recent. And she's also
April 17th.
She's also staying at home, and so she might be a good one to follow.
Yeah, I think she would be. I think she's talking about beautiful things and funny things. And
right.
All of that stuff helps.
Yes.
So that gets us back onto our dirt.
Which I already talked about.
I'll do the... that's okay. We can talk about it a little bit more.
Okay.
Let my words, like vegetables, be tender and sweet, for tomorrow I may have to eat them, author unknown. I think this is wise advice right now.
It is. It is very wise advice.
Everyone's really stressed, and it's starting to show a little bit.
Yeah.
So we need to be really kind to each other and need to be kind to each other online. But that's not really what our dirt's about. Our dirt is actually about damage, late spring freezings.
Yes. And so I did have a late spring freeze last week. It got down into the mid-20s for a sustained amount of time. So
that's a bad one.
Yeah. Around here, so some of the hostas took a beating. And those leaves turned to mush, and those should be cut off, as I said earlier. A lot of the foreign shrubs and trees, non-native shrubs and trees, tend to leaf out a little earlier here. And so I noticed some deutzia on the side of my house that is looking pretty spent up by the front. Yeah, it looks pretty rough. So most of the times they'll flush out with some new growth, so I won't worry about cutting all that stuff back now.
I had a freeze too. I've had a couple of them, but they only got down to 31. 31's not as bad, and it wasn't as long, and I wasn't too worried about it. I went out and looked around today because I knew we were going to talk about this, and I did plant some tender annuals in one bed, and I just did it because I wanted to see what would happen. And yeah, they kind of froze back a little bit, but they're going to be okay. And I'm just going to pull off the leaves. The reason you want to pull off the leaves or cut things back is because you don't want that dead foliage on your plants. It's harder on them. So go ahead and cut that back. And then I thought I saw something else that took a little bit of a hit. Well, for the life of me, oh, I know what it was. It was a St. John's wort, believe it or not.
That's interesting.
It looked a little stressed because it had really leafed out and it got nipped back pretty good. But other than that, things did just fine. And how we talked last week about climates and microclimates?
Right.
If you want to know what your microclimates are, a good time to check is after the freeze.
Right.
A few days after. Because you will walk around and say, oh, over there, that rose next to the wall did just fine. Well, and it may not be, your microclimates may not be like where you think they are, because I actually planted some coleus down by the little green shed. It came through just fine. But where the wind hits everything up by the street, that's where stuff got nipped pretty good.
Yeah, and our freeze was such that covering was not going to help. And so I laugh because people don't cover properly, and we're not even going to get into that today. So if you planted tomatoes and pepper,
well, just tell them how to cover properly. Just tell them that.
Well, if they're
going to cover,
never use plastic. Always use a cloth. And the whole idea of covering is so that when the sun goes down, the heat that's been absorbed in the ground all day radiates up, and so the idea is to trap that radiant heat under the covering, and it warms that area by a few degrees, and that often can make the difference between freeze damage and no freeze damage. So,
and if you have a particularly, I don't cover much. I did cover my crossvine, but I didn't cover it only because I wanted to get to see the blooms this year. And we did cover that, and we did cover it as best we could all the way to the ground, but you just do your best. We used a quilt on it. And then I was going to say, some people who have something prized, sometimes they will put Christmas lights in the branches of something. Like, say you had a citrus fruit tree and you were worried about it. Some people do that, and that helps warm things up too.
Only if you use regular old-fashioned light bulbs. If you use LED lights,
Right.
they're cool. They'll do nothing.
It won't work.
They'll tell the frost where
Exactly,
to
good
here,
point.
over here, over here.
Yeah, light it up for you. Yeah, old-fashioned bulbs, not the new ones. And then, but if you just throw something on top of it, that isn't enough.
No. And I'm a lazy coverer anyway. Just it is what it is.
Me too.
So, and I tell you, a lot of the non-native perennials, hostas, hardy ground orchids, even the Solomon seal, if we bring it all the way back to where we started, they are showing some damage. They'll just have to grow out of it.
Yeah, when you get into 22 degrees, mid-20s, 26, you're going to have some damage. When you're really close to 32, sometimes you're okay. And if you have some annuals out there that you planted early, or tomatoes, and they look really bad, I'm talking really bad, then you need to pull them out because they're going to die.
Right. And so let's end on a happier note. The sun is shining.
Okay.
My crabapple is blooming, like I
beautiful
said.
here.
It's a beautiful day. And we've just recorded another podcast episode. So we want to
Yay, us.
We want to thank you for listening to The Gardenangelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us.
And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
It was lovely to chat with you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye.